I went to see Monsignore John Azzopardi, archivist and a chaplain of the Knights of Malta. If anyone knows what the documents do or do not say, it should be him. In the less than peaceful surroundings of the National Library, he told me that by October the 6th, 1608, the record tells us that Caravaggio had escaped from prison. We know too that the knights staged a ceremonial defrocking of the artist in his absence, in front of his own painting of St. John. But it seems that there's a vital piece of evidence missing. So are you saying that we only have the document where he's accused in absentia for having fled Malta, but we don't have the document that tells us what he did to be thrown in prison in the first place?
That is not known. And there might not necessarily have been a document. Anybody who had committed any offence might have been put to prison without any document.
Peter Robb, in his book about Caravaggio, says that he thinks that Caravaggio's crime on Malta was something of a homosexual nature, and that this was such a matter of shame to the order that that's why we don't find the record. But
I think it's a hypothesis. Who knows? I think they wanted to defend, to protect Caravaggio.
If the crime was a sex crime, would the Knights of Malta have sought to conceal it? Or are there cases in these criminal records of Knights of Malta being accused, tried and found guilty of sodomy? Or is sodomy a crime that is suppressed, nobody talks about?
Officially it's suppressed, but officially it's a crime. But of course you know that in the days of the order and with knights and so on, there were also many abuses. I wouldn't think it would have been so shameful. I mean, they would have been much more offended if he said a hard word, so to a great member of the order than other things, I think.
Azzopardi showed me more evidence of how rule-obsessed the order must have been. A list of crimes committed by the knights, with large areas mysteriously obliterated. A book of statutes and punishments, showing the execution by drowning of a murderer. And, finally, a record of Caravaggio's imprisonment.
In the case of Caravaggio, we have the document that it was in Castel Sant'Angelo.
And is it possible to visit the prison?
The Guva. Traditionally, it's the Guva.
I thought that didn't exist. I thought it had been filled in. Is it possible to see it?
Shall we go and see it?
I'd love to go and see it.
Okay. I go first?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd heard that the Gouver had been filled in when the British took over Fort St. Angelo during the Second World War. But here it was, the most graphic reminder on Malta of Caravaggio's fall from grace. He had an eventful life, didn't he? Caravaggio. Can I have a torch? Thank you. Great. Stinks in here. How long do you think he was down here for?
You know that it was said that he fled from this prison. That is what is sure. The remark that he had fled from these prisons.
Would you do me a favour? Could you actually close the lid?
You want to have the feeling...
I want the full Caravaggio. Thank you. It's full of all these fantastic details. There's a wonderful inscription over here. Sort of famous last words of a man called John James Sandilands, who was apparently a Scottish Knight of Malta who was executed here. His body was apparently fed to the dogs. It says, "Here I am, imprisoned forever, victim of evil triumphing over good." And so much for friendship. And obviously somebody had let him down. He ended up in here. A fantastically strong sense of the implacability of the Maltese justice system here. I expect Caravaggio must have been pretty glad to get out of here. Monsignore! Monsignore! Can you... Monsignore! Just after we'd finished filming on Malta, Caravaggio's nameless crime was finally uncovered in the archive. A brawl involving some other knights. The cause is unknown, but one thing's for sure. By the time Caravaggio skipped the island, he'd made some powerful enemies. Caravaggio fled to Sicily, and while he was ceremonially deprived of his habit back in Malta, he was welcomed as a celebrity artist here. Early accounts, perhaps more interested in colour than truth, talk about his odd behaviour, even madness. It was said that he was as turbulent as the Straits of Messina. The evidence that we've got about Caravaggio here in Sicily after his time in Malta is contradictory. On the one hand, it seems from all the sources that he continued to pass himself off as a Knight of Malta, which isn't the behaviour of somebody running away from them as if they might be after him at any minute. But on the other hand, we know that he slept fully clothed and with his sword under his pillow. If someone was after him in Sicily, that someone was number one suspect in Caravaggio's eventual death. I couldn't rule out the Knights of Malta, but still favoured a killer from Rome. I think Tomasoni's brothers were still after him. But he never stopped painting, and there's a kind of spiritual extremism about the pictures he did in Sicily, which include this little-known but darkly brilliant depiction of Lazarus raised from the dead. Everything about Caravaggio's late style is designed to enable him to paint pictures very, very fast, I think. The way in which he's squeezed everything into this fairly narrow range. The connective tissue of art, of illusionistic art, everything that the Renaissance had built up, it's as if it's not there anymore. Caravaggio's light and dark is a wonderful way of getting rid of unnecessary complication. You just have this arm lifting up the stone under which Lazarus has been buried. You have Lazarus's arm reaching into the light of salvation, Christ's arm pointing, this face responding. But it's all you need. Tremendous sense of mortality in Caravaggio's late work. And I think a very troubling sense of the religious story. There's so much less light in Caravaggio's later pictures. It's as if he finds it harder to see the light. He finds it harder to see the possibility of salvation. Christ is almost invisible. Lazarus is half dead, half alive. Will he come back to life? Will he be saved? It's as if Caravaggio's painted a kind of doubt into the picture. He certainly suffered from a sense of personal doubt. When he was in Sicily, we know that one day he went into a local church and was offered some holy water to wash away his venial sins, and he said, "That's no good to me, all my sins are mortal."